What a joy that you have found us for this podcast. How exciting it is to think that this spiritual message is going out to people around this planet. Whether your life is working at a peak level or whether it can use some enhancement, have I got the message for you today. So get a piece of paper, get ready to take notes, call a friend, have them watch this podcast also. Then you too can have something to talk about and take it to a deeper level. So enjoy. Here we go.
It's Girls' Day at church today. This is what happens when Reverend Christian goes on vacation. The ladies take over. Sorry about that. So thank you. I love Soul Voice. They're great. Set me up really well today. They're a blessing. They're a blessing to us. Thank you. And so what a pleasure it is for me to be back here again on a Sunday. It doesn't happen very often, but whenever Dr. Christian asks, I say yes before I think about it too much. And because it's one of my favorite things to do, I get to talk at other churches. I'm away on Sundays a lot, going other places, and so rarely am I able to share my gift here. And it's such a wonderful place. This is my home. This is my spiritual community, and it's an honor to be here with you today. So my talk title is Keeping It Simple. And I'll tell you, that came up. They were pushing me for a title. Summer is a really busy time for me in my job as the dean of the Holmes Institute, and I'm flying all over the place, and we're doing all this crazy stuff. Bless Barbara Hart, my registrar, who works with me. Summer's a crazy time. But so I'm flying all over the place, and they're like, we need a title, come on, come on, come on. And then God just popped and said, okay, keeping it simple. Keeping it simple. And I had no idea what that meant. And it was really funny because I didn't, I'm flying all over. I'm doing my meditations on my daily work and everything, but I didn't have I usually like to have an extended period of time to prepare for my talk. And I take an extra day of personal retreat, Bless those who talk every week, Reverend Tammy and Dr. Christian. Oh my goodness. So we just bless them because I'll tell you, they need a break. They really do need a break if they do this every week. So I was in the process of trying to figure out what it was that I was going to talk about, and what kept coming up was the idea that we live these lives that are so complicated. We make everything so complicated, whether it's a huge issue in our life or a trauma or our job or our relationship with our boss or our mother, or whatever it is. Sometimes these situations, and it's kind of humorous to me, but sometimes they get pretty complicated. And so I was under the impression, well, you know what? We're going to go back to God. And then all of a sudden my subtitle popped up. So today we're doing Keeping It Simple, Going Back to God is what we're working with. So, but first, before I start, I was a little bit hesitant when Dr. Christian asked me this time. Normally I say yes. And I was a little bit hesitant because I was afraid that everybody would kind of be looking at me a little funny and going, is something going on with Reverend Katherine? She looks a little bit different. And so I just wanted to let you know, so that you can be listening to what my talk is about, I'm going to actually come out and say that my husband and I are expecting a baby in December. And so I'm about 5 months pregnant, and I'll tell you, it's starting to show a little bit. So I was afraid that you'd be looking at that and not listening to what I'm saying. So now that we all know this, then we can move on our path, okay? And I'm far enough past it. I'm not feeling sick. I'm feeling great, feeling wonderful, and I'm just eating a lot. And so you should have seen me in between the services because I was like needing to eat. But so keeping it simple, going back to God. So these complicated situations in our lives, it can be from the smallest thing as, trying to deal with old financial things or trying to straighten up our life or have a clear communication with our teenage child or working, whatever it is. But sometimes we just make things a mess. Am I wrong? Am I the only one who does this? Anybody else have a sense of having that happen? Okay, so it's just me, but that's okay. No. And so it's about trying to bring this idea of God that we have into our day-to-day lives and trying to remember how God operates in our life. Because I think what happens is we forget. We come to church on Sunday and we get inspired, and we come to class, and if you haven't been in a religious science class, taken foundations, I'm going to really suggest that you do that, because it's a way to really deepen in this message and understand, and basic beliefs today, actually, after the service, is a way to really deepen in the understanding of what we believe that God is. And so to do this, we need to start with, what is God? And now I'm sure you've heard it. If you've been here before, you've heard it. God is the power and presence, the creative force that has brought forth all things, moving through, in, through, and as all things. It is that essence, that energy of love, of light, of truth, right? We've all heard that. But what does that really mean? What does that mean to you in your life? Well, I'll tell you what it means. And it means a whole lot more to me now that I'm going through this experience. That there is a wisdom that is the wisdom of God that is absolutely present in every single moment of your life and in every cell of your body. And you may not know that every cell of your body has wisdom, but I'll tell you, I know every cell of my body has wisdom, because there's stuff that's going on right now that I would have no idea how to handle, but God does, let me tell you, as I'm supporting this new life and coming through. But I know absolutely for you that power and that presence of Spirit is there with you in every moment. And so Thomas Troward was one of the inspirations of Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. And he was this amazing man who was a judge from England who went and lived in India. And so he studied all of the creative process and all of these amazing mystical concepts, and then wrote about them in legalese. So if anyone's ever taken the Roots class or read Troward, he writes like a lawyer. But he was really able to distill down to the creative process, to the absolute beautiful simplicity that is there. God had a thought, and it was you, and you were created. And it was he talks about it as being the self-contemplation of the Spirit out of joy. And so God, in its infinite presence, had a moment of joy and of bliss and of celebration, and you were created. Just like that talk popped through me, you popped into existence. That's how it happened. And so God, as we talk about, is not that you better watch out, you better not pout kind of God up in a cloud, waiting to judge you. God is the presence that has created all things, has brought forth all things, and is infused as you and as your life unfolding. And so we need to kind of see where we are with that, because we've studied that a lot. We talk about it a lot. We think about it. We contemplate it. We meditate on it. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out what God is. But I'm wondering if down in the bottom, somewhere in the back of your mind or in the bottom of your conscious awareness, there's this little part that says, well, I should still be good just in case. Just in case I kind of get close to the end of my life and, maybe I do have to go to those gates and make amends for everything I did. Maybe I should think about being good, So that's the part that is not in alignment with the truth of your being. And so are you still holding on to some old idea of limitation or lack or some outside force that's creating your life? When something bad happens or something challenging happens in your life, are you thinking, well, see, there it is, that outside force that's against you. My boss just wants me to suffer, or this company just doesn't want us to succeed, or I don't know what it is, I just can't find the right person to love. The universe is against me. Because I'll tell you that God in this essence and this energy is pure good and only wants the greatest and highest and best for you, and to bring forth that amazing gift that you are. We were blessed last week to have Reverend Nirvana Gale with us, who's this powerful minister, and so if you missed it, I suggest that you get a tape. But what he talked about was that when we come into this life, that there are these structures that are set up to support us in forgetting who we are. And so we have the media, which, we all know the media is not really supporting us. They're trying to get us to spend our money. Okay, so we have the media. And then we have our families, and sometimes our families aren't the most supportive, are they? No. Okay. Amen to that. And then there's our spiritual communities of our youth, not this one, but our youth, and anything that limits you. But what I suggest is that these things are in place to allow us to be who we came here to be. Our soul's journey here is to bring forth that light and that love that we came here to be. You know, everybody talks about purpose. I want to try and find my purpose, Reverend Katherine. Help me try and find my purpose. What am I here to do? Well, I don't believe that your purpose in life is to do anything. I believe your purpose in life is to walk your path and be who you came here to be, and not limit yourself, and not hide your light, and not pretend you're something that you're not. It's to be authentically who you are. Because each one of us has a gift, that individual gift, that breath of spirit that was breathed into us. And that our life purpose is here to allow the soul to express who we are. And the more that you do that, the more that the creative process, which is God itself, supports you in living a full life and being in that sense of joy and connection with all things. And that changes the world. We're called to that right now. This is like really important work that we're doing, I think. And I'll tell you, the percentage of people that are aware that this is the work for us to do on this planet right now is tiny. It's tiny. If you're sitting in this sanctuary, or if you're listening to this, and within the sound of my voice, I'll tell you, you have an awareness that most people don't have, and you are called by the divine to know the truth of who you are so other people outside can do it. It's our work. It's why we're here. And it doesn't seem, I don't want to make it heavy. It's not really heavy. It's about living a full, loving, joyous, fulfilled life. So all these experiences that we come forth with, that we create, I'll tell you, old-time religious scientists, are pretty harsh about this stuff. They say, well, you created it. Fix it. Go ahead. You're the one who did it, so get out of it, We're a little bit more compassionate now than we used to be, I think. Because the truth is that the situation is created for you to to bring forth a different aspect, to work a different muscle. This is like working out, How much do we love going to the gym? I don't really always love going to the gym. And I don't always love dealing with the complicated situations in my life. But I'll tell you, when you can do it with a little bit of humor, and I just laugh. Some of the things that I create in my life, I don't know about you, but it is hilarious. And I've been studying this stuff for a decade. I've been spending every day of the last 10 years of my life, I've been spending studying these concepts and meditating and praying and deepening in this. And I've created some amazing things in my life, and every once in a while I get into a situation and I'm like, what were you thinking? What is this about? And we just all get there. We all get there. It all happens. And so it's about trying to see in that moment where God is. That's where we're going. That's what going back to God means. It means that in every experience, something is trying to be born. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a pregnant lady on the stage giving a sermon, okay? Anyone who's ever taken a class with me has heard me say this. What we're trying to do is develop spiritual sight so that you can see that in every situation, a quality or an experience of God or an aspect of yourself is trying to be born. It's trying to be pulled out of you. And whether that's more compassion for the coworker, who's not being very nice to you, or more love, or forgiveness for something from the past. Something's being called forth from within you. And that's what we're talking about in terms of going back to God. If you can start to see through that, if you can get to that place of what's trying to be born, then you're ready to do your spiritual practice. Then you're ready to do your spiritual mind treatment. But sometimes we just get kind of caught in the mess and the twirl of the hurricane of our experience, and we get lost in the story. Oh my goodness, and we've got some good stories. I'll tell you, I think we could all be novelists, because it's like when we get stuck in this story, the story of my life, this is what happened to me, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this person said this, and then I did that, and I can't believe that, And so it's like stopping the cycle of the story and getting real and seeing what's really real. So what is real? Is the external world real? Or is what's the quality of who you are and who you're trying to be real? And we get to make a choice. That's the good thing about this. We're not in a philosophy where it's not easy. It's like I said, it's like working out. It's not like we get to go sit in a really nice space and just have someone tell us how things are and just be passive about it. This is a fully active, participatory philosophy. And we get out of it what we put in it. And so the more you practice it, the more mastery you get of it. And still I get situations like this. Reverend Katherine, well, I've read all these books, and I've done all these classes, and I've done all my meditations, and my bank account is still empty. So what's up with that? Why doesn't that work? Well, I'll tell you. I went to Dr. Ernest Holmes to find out why that's true, or how that could be true. He says in our textbook, The Science of Mind, in the great universal mind, man is at a center of intelligence, and every time he thinks, he sets mind in action. Because of the oneness of mind, it cannot know anything outside itself, and therefore cannot contradict any thought given it, but must reflect whatever is cast into it. We are immersed in an infinite creative medium, which because of its nature must create after the pattern our thought gives it. Jesus understood this, and in a few simple words laid down the law of life. It is done unto you as you believe. No more simple and yet no more profound statement could ever have been made. And so the truth is if you're still creating a situation, if you're sitting in a situation that is something that you've been working on for a long time, you haven't reached the knowing yet. You haven't figured out what's trying to be born yet. You haven't figured out what the quality of God that you're calling to embody and experience yet. You're just not there yet. So you got to go back and start all over again and start saying, okay, where am I attached? What am I not willing to look at within myself? What past hurt is holding me back? Where am I holding on to anger? You know, a wise teacher once told me that I'm going to get this right this time, we spend 70% of our time, or 70% of our energy on the past, all that had happened, and we spend 25% of our energy worrying about that what happened before is going to happen again. And so that means we only have 5% of our energy in the present moment to create what it is that we're trying to create. And so that's a tiny amount of our creative power. And I'll tell you, Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, one of my teachers also, says that wherever God is, all of God is. Wherever any of God is, the totality of the power and the presence of God is. So we know that God is right where we are. Well, just think about that for a second. You have the infinite creative force of God right where you are. You have all of the wisdom that has created all things from the beginning of time available to you right where you are. You have the love that has loved each and every thing into being for all time right at the center of where you are. So there's no block there. We're just blocking it. I grew up as a dancer. I was my first memory of life is being in the dance studio, actually. And I twirled everywhere I went for the first 10 years of my life, twirling and hopping. And so I'm a mover. I've always been a mover. I've always been very kinesthetic and very active. And so when I stepped into this philosophy and realized that a lot of it was about stillness, I was a little bit nervous. Because I've meditated too, but okay, I'll go into this stillness, but I love those like sweating your prayers kinds of workshops and those twirling kinds of things, And so I was so thrilled when I started to do my contemplation and my meditation work to know that what I'm really hooking into is that infinite flow of God. Okay, so we teach about the creative process, that it goes from mind through law into form, right? That's how we teach it. The mind of the thought, the seed is planted in the mind of God that moves in through the law into form, into manifestation or experience, okay? So what I was so thrilled to see is that when I would go into my meditation, I could feel that flow move straight through me, and there was no stopping. There's no stopping it. It's constantly moving through us. And you can either work against it or you can work with it. I had an experience recently. I was in Hawaii with my family. And there was this poor gentleman on the trip. We went on a kayaking adventure where we had to go, in kayaks up the river about a mile. And then we went to hike to this beautiful waterfall. It's a very easy trip, not too difficult. And there was this gentleman on the trip with his family, and he was with his preteen daughter. And so they were trying to kayak up, and we're kind of moving along with the group. And here's this man way far behind us, because he had this 13-year-old daughter who tried a little bit, she's in that age that she's like, I'll try, no. And she just wouldn't do it. So she was standing there with her paddle on her lap. And so here's this father who is working really hard to get up the river. He had to paddle that kid up a mile up the river to try and get to this place. And he got so mad and he got so frustrated and he just didn't know what he was going to do because he was not going to be able to get back because he was actually with the wind going up and he was going to have to come back with the wind at his face and against the current going back. And he didn't think that he was going to be able to make it. And so he was so mad that he couldn't even go on the hike to the beautiful waterfall, to the most sacred spot on Kauai, because of the fact that he was so mad at his daughter. He said, just go, I'll be right here, just go. And so me being who I am, excuse me, sidled up to him before we got back, and I said, you might want to think of letting her lead the paddling. Instead of trying to get her to paddle with you, maybe you want to let her have the reins of it and see what happens. And so he did. He just looked, he said, well, I'll try anything because I don't know what's going to happen. And so he did. And on the way back, he said to her, why don't you just start paddling and I'll match you? And she was like, fine, she's 13. Fine. Oh, to be 13 again. And so she's like flipping water, this poor guy's getting flipped, with water, and she's flipping down. But she did it, and she was trying, and so he matched her. And so pretty soon they got into a rhythm of it. And so instead of trying to get what's in front of him to match him, he was matching what was in front of him. And he got to go where he needed to go. And that's what we do sometimes, don't you think? Sometimes we have this attachment of how we want it to be or what we want it to look like or what it needs to be like. And we want it so badly that it doesn't happen. But I'm doing my prayer work, but I'm doing my affirmations, but I'm doing this. I know it. I know it's the truth of who I am. I know it. Well, if you know it like that, you're attached to it being that way. And I'll tell you, he had a much more fun time with her when he let her lead that. And so that's life. Because there's a broader perspective here that happens. And sometimes when we are too attached to what we think the outcome should be, we're actually limiting ourselves. We're holding it back. And so the Dalai Lama has this teaching that I love. He says that when circumstances of our own lives precipitate a longing and desire to be free, the soul will step forward to be free. And so all of these things that happen to us, all of these situations that come up, support us in getting ready to take the step to change something and to get ready to really know when it's time to do it. And I'll tell you, I'm also a little bit of, well, not a little bit, I'm a Gemini. And so that means that I talk a lot to myself in my head. I have these conversations. There's like two of us at least, How are you today? I'm great, thanks. Okay, how are you? And so I know really well when I'm fooling myself. I know when I'm being complacent. I know when I need to make a change in my life and when I'm not willing to do it yet. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes we need to feel our feelings, Sometimes we need to be in the frustration or in the pain or in the question or the worry of it and just get completely embodied of it so that you can see that that's not where you want to live. You don't want to live in anger or resentment or blame. Oh my goodness, that just feels yucky. But sometimes it takes us getting into it to be able to step out of it. And so it's okay. It's okay to just say, I'm just going to be mad today. They said that to me and I'm mad, And so it's okay to do that. But how long do you really want to sit in that? The more that you sit in it, the quicker time you're going to be ready to take the step to get out of it. And so I know, going back to my inner conversations with myself, please don't think I'm crazy. I'm not really crazy. But don't tell the baby. But it's about knowing when I'm fooling myself. It's time, Katherine. It's time to make a change. It's time to say what needs to be said. It's time to take that step and make that choice to make a different step, make a different choice, and change it. Because we get so comfortable with moderate amounts of pain, I find. People have a certain amount of a tolerance for pain that they can just sit in, they can live in. You know what? Okay, that's fine. I can struggle this much. I can deal with struggling a little bit. That's okay. I'm used to it by now. You know, or physical pain, or emotional pain, or sadness. But how long do you want to live in that? When there's this amazing infinite presence sitting right where you are that just wants good for you. And instead of choosing that love and that bliss and that joy and that amazing celebration for life, we choose to sit in this moderate amount of pain and be okay with our lives. I had a professor who, in college, a psych professor, who decided that he wanted to teach us about life instead of psychology, which was fine with me. And he said on our first day of class, it was my first day of class freshman year of college, and he said to me, he said to the class, I'm sorry, it's not me, it was like 200 people. He said, you know what, I don't care what you do with your life, but just don't be mediocre. He said, it doesn't matter what you choose. It doesn't matter if you become a psychologist or you become a doctor or you become, a fry cook at McDonald's. Just don't be mediocre. And so are we called to be the light that we came here to be mediocre? I don't think so. So going back to God means that in every situation that we are in, trying to be able to bring forth that presence of God within us outward. And so it means being present where we are. And it means being able to know where we're fooling ourselves and where we're attached on a certain level of how to be, and that what's not serving us anymore. And so that takes practice. I need to tell you, it takes practice. We talk about our spiritual practice. We do our meditations every day. We do our prayer work. And I need to let you know, if there's a time in your life where you can't see this truth or you can't find God in a situation, you need to step out and ask for help. We have amazing practitioners here who pray for us every day, who are here after service on Sundays. We've got the Spiritual Support Center. We are a community loving and caring for one another. And our spiritual practitioners are wanting to be able to support you. And so if there's something that is heavy on your heart, or if there's a situation that you just can't see God, and I just can't see it, I can't get past this old idea of myself or this old attachment, you need to ask for help. And sometimes even just the stepping, the asking, is that which will break the gates open and allow that creative flow of God to move through. And it takes dedication and commitment to constantly be questioning your belief. Because as we know, it is done unto us as we believe. And so what is that belief that's operating in your life right now? And so that's where our spiritual reading comes in, and that's where our classes come in, and that's where we come together with groups of like-minded people. We've got great opportunities all fall in our Gourmets for God for some parties. We're going to have some fun here. But in ways of coming together with those people who see the world in the same way. And so that you're inspired to be able to know the truth of who you are because they're being who they are. And to remember that truth of the divine is there where you are. And so I think that there's some practices. I always like to finish with giving you some tools. I'm a teacher, and I'm kinesthetic, so I like to give you some stuff to practice during the week. Don't worry, there won't be a test. But one of them is to be present. To when something happens, when you have that emotional reaction, to see where that's coming from, because very few times are we actually angry about what we think we're mad about. When someone says something to us and we have an anger reaction, it's really not about that person. It's really not about what they said. It's something from the past. And so how can you bring yourself into the present moment and allow for more compassion to come forth from your heart and do some forgiveness on the person from the past? Because it's only us that get tied up in it. We're trying to free our creative energy, our creative flow, so that we're not using 5%, we're using 95%, okay? Let's hit for that. I mean, I want 100%, but, I'll hit for 95. That'll be good. And so being present. But sometimes I think it takes changing your perspective.
there was a movie a number of years ago called Dead Poets Society, and I love that movie. I wish I had had that English professor in high school, although it was a school for boys. It's Girls' Day at church, but it's Boys' Day in the movie. And so he taught in an English class that we always need to be questioning our perspective and looking at the way we look at the world. And so he had all the students get up on their desks to look at the world a different way. I was going to have everybody get up on their chairs, but I didn't want to. I figured I'd get in a little bit of trouble if I did that. So I was thinking of that yesterday, and I decided I was at my house and doing my preparation for this, and so I decided to. I was sitting out in my back, and I looked up the hill. I live halfway up a hill, and I looked up the hill and realized that I had never been up the hill before. So I said, okay, well, I need to change my perspective. Now, I live up a little bit up on a valley, and the incline is a little bit like this. And so I was like, well, I'll just hike up that hill. There we go, forgetting that I'm 5 months pregnant. And so I'm huffing and puffing up this hill to try and get up there, which is kind of funny. And I went not very far, probably, like I was saying before, like about 1/8 of a mile or something, just a little bit up the hill. And I turned around, I'm looking at the road, basically. And then all of a sudden I turn around, and I knew I lived on a beautiful valley, but there was this whole other side of a valley that was there with like a whole farm and a whole grove of avocado trees that I had no idea were there. And there was this whole new perspective on what's right around the corner from me, and I had no idea that it was there. And it was I'm telling you, 1/8 of a mile, not very far. A little bit of heavy work for me to get there, but it wasn't very far. And so it reminded me that if all the power and the presence of God is right where we are, and if I just take a step to change my perspective, just think of what's there to support you. You just need to take the step and be open to realizing that infinite is coming through you and is there trying to help you. We just need to let it in. We need to let it happen. And so changing our perspective is one of them. The other thing is stepping into the creative process. So in order to do that, you need to do something creative. And so I know people say to me all the time, well, I'm not an artist. Well, I don't care. That's even better. Get some crayons and some paper and start coloring. That gets your body and your mind into the creative process. If you're trying to change something in your life, you should have crayons by your bed and be coloring before you go to sleep. Right, Sharon? Is that a good thing? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you're drawing. It doesn't matter what it is. Try and cook something new. How about bananas Foster? Everybody goes home and tries to make bananas Foster this week. I have no idea how to do it, but do something new that you've never tried before. Plant something. Go somewhere that you've never been. In our town, Get a new perspective. Get into the creative process. And that's going to open those floodgates and allow this truth of who you are to come forth. Because the infinite wants the best for you. The infinite wants what you want in your heart. And the infinite divine love of God is sitting right where you are. And so I know that as you move through this week and as you go through your days, that you're starting to be able to see that divine presence there. And my challenge to you this week is to see that every situation you can go back to God and to know that God is right where you are and that what's trying to be born is you. You're trying to be born in your full expression of love, of light, of truth, of power, and all the amazing blessings of God. And so I bless you and I thank you for this time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'd like to invite the ushers to come forward as we do take our gift from our heart. Again, with a lot of heart and soul and passion. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am prosperous now. Hey, I trust you enjoyed that podcast. It was very exciting to be able to create that and to know that there are people like you all around the world that are observing and integrating these spiritual principles into their life. And so if you enjoyed it, what I'd like to do is encourage you to tell a friend or bring several friends together and watch another one of these podcasts. And then afterwards, take some time to talk about the spiritual principles, to talk about the stories and what significance they have and relevance they have in your life. What then happens is it moves to a deeper and deeper level in your world. It becomes real and assists you to create the freedom in your life that your heart and soul so desire. So if you like this, I encourage you to watch it again, but also tune into our website here at seasidecenter.org. There, you can get some of my written material and take a look at it. You can read some of my spiritual prayers. You can even go to our online bookstore and order some of the books. And if you're so moved, what I greatly would appreciate is your financial support, which you could do online at seasidecenter.org. It is support like yours that assists us to be able to continue to do these kinds of gifts for humanity and send it out to the world. Because you know what? We are making a difference with this spiritual message. And because of support like yours, people are being touched in the farthest reaches of this planet, as well as our backyard, more than we could ever begin to realize. So I thank you from the fullness of my heart for making a difference.